Welcome to the Insurance Wise Guys podcast. My name is Mike Lewis, insurance agency owner of Archibald & Lewis Insurance and your Insurance Wise Guy. On today's episode of Know, Like, and Trust, I have Chris Kuntz, worship pastor, Hope Missionary Church. Okay, my guest today, originally from Fort Wayne, married his wife Lisa in 1996 and have been blessed with 3 amazing sons. He currently resides in Ossian, Indiana, where he gives back to his community in more ways than one. You may find him flying a drone, assisting the sheriff's department, possibly driving a fire engine to a rescue scene. But one thing is for sure, you will find him on Sunday at Hope Missionary Church. Everyone help me welcome worship pastor Chris Kuntz. Chris, how are you?
Hey man, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm really glad that you said yes and you wanted to come be a part of this.
Anything for you, man.
Now, three quick questions. Has nothing to do with the church at all. Are you an Apple or an Android guy?
Apple, all the way.
Apple. I knew I liked you a lot. Yeah. Tell me the last app that you downloaded.
The last app I downloaded was probably DJI.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if you had to get rid of everything on your phone, what 3 apps would you keep?
What 3 apps would I keep? Well, I am responding.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And probably my Logos software, which is a Bible software.
Mm-hmm.
And probably a game, just to kill time.
Yeah, time killer.
Yeah.
I'm an iPhone guy too.
Yeah. Well, you can't go wrong.
All right. So, being a pastor,
yeah,
I know you want to try to live the best life that you can, but none of us here on earth are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand about 3 years ago, you were arrested for theft. Would you care to elaborate on that story? How
did I know? How did I know that was going to come up? Yeah, so definitely not arrested. No record there.
I see.
But definitely chastised in humor.
Uh-huh.
So you want the whole story?
Yeah, tell me so that somebody else that maybe doesn't know that story.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it'd probably be good to clarify on the record, right?
Uh-huh.
So common practice was to leave work in the morning and stop at the gas station in Ossian. And what I love about small towns is you can get your gas and then go inside and pay, whereas in some of the bigger cities, you have to pay at the pump. So I made it a habit to get my fuel, go in, get a cup of coffee, and then pay. What's funny about this story is typically I would always run into Chief Rigney in there, and we would say hi, good morning, whatever. So I'd gotten my fuel, I was walking in, and there happened to be a really nice brand new Suburban there that had the automatic running boards. So when you open the door, they come out. And if I'm being completely honest, I was lusting after the truck when I walked in. And so I'm getting distracted, thinking about that. I go in, get my coffee, and as I'm walking up to the front to pay, almost ran into somebody who was coming down a different aisle. And said sorry, and they said, no, go ahead. So I got up there really quick, and I was kind of flustered, just wanting to get out of the way, and opened up my wallet, saw a couple dollars, had my coffee, threw a couple bucks down, paid for my coffee, walked out the door, jumped in the truck, went to work. And probably about an hour later, I hear some sirens. And so I just happened to yell down the hallway to some of the other guys. It's like, somebody's getting pulled over. And I heard one of the other guys say, yeah, and he's right here at our front door. And I thought, what in the world? So I walked in, I looked out one of the windows, and there's one of the Ossian police cars there right at the front door with the lights going and everything. So I thought, I don't know what is going on. So we walked around the hallway, and we're going down, and I hear somebody say, it's Chief. So I was like, oh, he's here. He's just going to pick on somebody. And then, of course, the rest of it's caught on film and floating around on Facebook for the world to see. Walked in, and he showed me a piece of paper, and one picture had me walking away from the pump, and the other one was me standing at the counter. And I thought, wow, this guy really went to a lot of trouble to give me a hard time, And it took me a little while to figure out that I had forgotten to pay for my fuel. In the midst of all the confusion, I just left. So it was very humorous, and they gave me a hard time, and it's ended up on the stage Sunday mornings multiple times as an example. So took about 2 years to live that down.
Pretty good. I heard there's a criminal in here.
Oh yeah?
Got a tip.
It's right there. It's right there. Pointing everywhere.
Oh, it's you.
It's you.
What are you doing?
What's he stealing?
Where'd you get? You pulled that from?
Oh my goodness.
You stole some gas this morning, man.
No.
What's up with that?
Oh, I forgot
Yeah.
to pay for my gas.
Take him in, Chief. Welcome. Welcome, Dano. Put the cuffs on him. Haul him away. Come on, throw him in the back seat. We want to see that.
I did. I hit pay inside and then I paid cash for my coffee.
Oh, yeah, that old excuse. You've heard that one before, haven't you, Chief? You're not going to buy that. Come on, Chief.
Oh my goodness.
Cuff him and stuff him. Come on, right now. Do it. Take him down. Taser him. Taser him. Come on, Chief. Don't let him get away with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to help
You're bringing it back.
revisit that
Appreciate
for
that.
sure. You know, hey, that's honestly that's a great thing about living in a small town is you know, they know you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you didn't mean to do that, but so no official record. I want you to turn back the clock with me. I want to know Chris Kuntz before you became involved with Hope. Before you take me back, far as you want to go. Far as you want to go.
Okay.
Take me back, and then bring me forward to today with what's going on and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I'll take you way back, but I'll give you a quick version. Grew up in a family of 6, so 4 boys, including myself. My younger brother, 2 years younger than me, had muscular dystrophy, and so a lot of difficulties with family finances and lots of doctor's visits and everything as we grew up. He passed shortly before he turned 16, and then fast forward a little bit, I get through high school. Get out of high school, go straight into the workforce, worked in foundries, worked in welding shops, worked excavation and building homes, so kind of a really wide variety of skills. And eventually met my wife. Well, we had met in high school, but we eventually started dating again, and then we got married. And it was at that point, of course, I grew up a PK, so grew up as a pastor's kid. My dad was a pastor, so grew up in the church. But those years after high school until I met my wife and we decided to get married were my rebellious years, you know, doing everything and anything. Then when Lisa and I started dating, she said, you know, if we're going to make this work, we're going to make church. Sunday morning is going to be part of our thing. And I was like, that's fine. So we started doing that, and it didn't take long to get back into helping with music on stage and in the front. We were a part of a couple church plants, and then eventually landed in, it was really funny, we landed in churches that I grew up in. So
Really?
We went back to where my mom and dad were serving and or were attending, and I served there for 6 years as the worship pastor there. Decided that in order to lead my teams better and to lead the people better, I needed to get more training because I was at the top of what I knew and I couldn't take them any further. So I stepped out of that position, went to another church that was much larger on the southwest side of town, and was just going to go serve and just be a part of it and kind of soak in some of that higher learning and some of the bigger church ways of doing things. Went and auditioned for the team and walked off the stage, and they offered me a job right away as one of their assistant worship pastors. So spent 5 years there, and then got to that point in my career profession as a pastor that I wanted to take it to that next step. So then that's what led us to Hope. Found out that they were hiring a worship pastor, and
What year was that?
that was 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, so almost 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been here since 2015. Love the community, love the camaraderie and the smallness of Bluffton and Aussie, and it's worked out really well for us.
So, okay, so you say 2015 you started at Hope. Let's talk about Hope for a minute.
Yeah.
You say small but huge membership, but yet I hear folks talking about how it feels small, like a family. Talk to me about why you think that is and what makes Hope different from others in the area.
Well, if you watch any of the services, Pastor Gary or any of the pastors that are on stage will often say we're one church, but we meet in a variety of locations, and that's basically been out of necessity. Hope as a body of people has gotten big enough that we can't all meet in one room. We can't even all meet in the same building. I don't know exactly when it was. It was several years before I showed up, but they had started meeting not only in the main worship center, but down in the gym. And I think it started as a Saturday night. That grew, and they eventually moved and went to Irish Acres, or what was Irish Acres, just north of Ossian, south of Ossian, and started meeting there as a satellite campus. Of course, that's morphed and grown and changed, and now they're on the very south end of Ossian right there. And in the building, in the main campus at Hope, we have services that meet in the gym, and we have services that meet in the worship center. And so I think the smallness of a large church comes from the little venues. We have lots of little venues that meet. But beyond that, there's familial ties. You've got families who have grown up in that church. And so there's those bonds, and people who went to high school together are still attending that church together. And so it almost seems like the bigger we get, the smaller we have to grow in order to keep those ties and to keep that. Otherwise, you're walking into a large building where nobody knows your name. Right. And you're going to walk in, you're going to walk out, and nobody's going to know you were there.
Right, which is not what you want.
No, it's not what we want. So yeah, the larger we get, the smaller we have to think in terms of keeping people connected.
Yeah, so I like that for sure, and I know you have a lot of small groups where people can get involved and keep it more family knit like that. Let's talk about COVID for a second. 2020, churches all over the country were shut down. Some still are, some completely. How has that affected churches as a whole, and specifically, did it affect Hope as far as like membership, outreach, income, even?
Well, let's start with the income thing. We'll talk about that real quick. It did not affect us negatively in that regard. And actually, I've heard this from a lot of different churches. Their giving almost went up in a lot of cases when churches were shut down and they weren't able to meet. I would say that's God's provision. Our weekly and monthly income was far above when we were all home in lockdown. And it actually went back down as people started coming back into the building. I don't know exactly what to contribute that to, other than all the bills were paid, and the staff was able to be paid, and the ministries that we helped were able to be paid. And so that in and of itself was a blessing. How it affected the church itself, we're still seeing this, and we're in conversations right now about post-quarantine. We're actually going through a book right now that talks about the post-quarantine church. How do you meet the needs of people who have been isolated, who've lost loved ones, who weren't able to actually come with closure to some of those because some funerals you couldn't go to. How do we help people whose marriages have been affected because of quarantine? We've seen a lot. Addiction has gone up, drug use has gone up, divorce rates have gone up, depression has gone up. And so, as a church, we're talking about how do we meet the needs of people that are reeling from the effects of shutdown and quarantine and things that as a society we've never had to deal with in these generations. And so that's what we're dealing with right now. Now, Hope was fortunate in that Wells County's positivity rates, the color coding map, we were yellow orange for a long time. We really didn't have a lot of cases here in Wells County. And so that enabled us, especially after the governor said that we can't tell churches how many they can have in their building. We just ask that you follow social distancing guidelines and stuff. So we actually were only shut down for, I think, a couple months. And then on Mother's Day, we opened back up. Limited seating. We actually added venues. We added three additional venues within the building. So we had 5 venues within the building so that we could put small pockets of people in each one. We live streamed within the building itself. And then we even added a masked only service. And so if you came into the building, you were high risk, or you just didn't want to be around people, you had a separate entrance. You walked in that door, masks for the entire service, and then you walked out that same door. So limited access to a bunch of people. In terms of membership, we're still seeing that we're probably still only running about 70 to 75% people that are actually showing up on Sunday. We still have probably 300 to 500 people that we haven't seen enter back into the building, and we know some of them are families with young children who have found it much easier to watch online and stay at home. Some of those are people who decided that would be a good time to move on to a different church, which is fine. And then the last group of people would be still the high risk people who just aren't ready to come back yet. And so we've been fortunate in that we've been able to open up and maintain those guidelines for social distancing, but still have in-person services, as well as a good online presence as well.
Yeah, so online has really, in my opinion, saved that scenario of church and involvement in church over that time. So it sounds like you guys really had that well thought out to do what you can do. But I did, it was a concern of myself and other people that membership would drop during that time, because just like you said, when you were younger, you went away from the church, and it just becomes a habit. You weren't going, therefore it grows and grows and grows, and that's what can happen when all of a sudden you can't go, and you just get used to not going, and there you go. But kind of along that same lines, what do you think is the biggest issue in churches today? Is it an involvement with people, the money, the leadership? Talk to me about your thoughts on the biggest problems that maybe not only Hope faces, but churches in general will face with today's world.
With the changes that we've experienced, I think it's kind of a tough question, because I think each church is going to feel this a little bit differently. As we've talked as a staff looking back at 2020, it's super easy to focus on the restrictions. Really easy to focus on everything that we couldn't do, because it was the normalcy had been taken away. The box or the structure within that we worked within was gone. Like, there's no box anymore. And so it really forced us as a staff and churches across the country and the world for that matter, how do we do this thing where the normal thing is to gather people together and have community and have family, and now you can't do that, or at least for a time you couldn't do that. But that's when we realized that we've got all of these other opportunities. For example, we have approximately 12 to 1,300 people pre-COVID that were attending in-building services on Sunday mornings. When we were shut down and we went completely online, all of a sudden we picked up 400 to 500, almost 600 new people that were watching, that were downloading the app, that were on our social media accounts that we had no idea where they came from. All of a sudden we had people watching from all over the world, missionaries and people who had been here on student exchange programs. And so all of a sudden, all of these new faces and all of these new contacts were coming, and we've retained some of those. But I think, the process in which we've walked through as a church, one, it's stressed out staff. I've noticed that within our staff, there has been just a different working environment, not bad, it's just different. And I think that's going to happen anytime you have a group of people that work within a normal structure of things. And then all of a sudden that structure gets blown up. Now everybody's scrambling. For me, in my position as the worship pastor, services were still happening. Whether we were recording on Sunday morning or whether we had people in the building, it was still going on. So my job changed a little. The technology changed a lot. But what I did on Sunday morning didn't change a whole lot. But for our ministry leaders, like high school or middle school or children's ministry, adult leaders, they no longer were able to do their normal thing. They had to completely revamp. So I think there was a large stress there on our staff. And I think some of the things that we're going to struggle with moving forward in general as a church is that thing that you mentioned. It's become normal. Now people have realized, well, I don't have to leave on Sunday morning. I can get up, I can grab my cup of coffee, I can grab my Bible or or cuddle up with the family on the couch. We can do church, and then we can just go on about our day. And I think the struggle is going to be helping people remember and realize that the community, being in relationship with one another, is how we were created. And I think without that community, without that relationship, we become isolated, we become islands, and nobody survives like that. And so I think that's one of the larger challenges we're going to face. Like I said, money wasn't an issue. People were generous, and people, sustained the church that way. But it's going to be getting those people to reconnect and realize that practice of getting up in the morning and getting your family together and going to church and meeting and singing in the same room and listening to God's word, that's going to be the hard thing, is getting them to come back when that habit has been formed of not doing that. So I think that's probably
getting people to come back. I'm a super positive person myself, and I can see that it's really good to hear that your membership, in a way, grew even though it was shut down. That's really good to hear. But again, a church is people, not a building. So
exactly.
We don't want to leave them at home all alone all the time. Knowing what you know now, just your life, you've lived your life, what is the best piece of advice you were ever given, or what would you tell someone that maybe would make a difference in their life? Just could have been a family member, could have been a mentor, something that you learned along the road.
2 major lessons I've learned in my life, and both of them, unfortunately, were associated with death. The first one was never, and I will tell this to my boys and my wife, and I try and practice this, never leave a conversation or let the sun go down if you're still in conflict with somebody, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. And that lesson came from the brother that I'd mentioned who had passed away with muscular dystrophy. I was doing my normal high school rebellious stuff, had done something stupid, gotten kicked out of school for a couple days. And on the day that I went back to school, my dad and my brother drove me to school. And I didn't realize it, but my brother was very, very close to death at that point. Like it was either that day, actually it was that day. Dad and David had taken me to school, dropped me off, and David asked me to do something. And I was being a normal teenage kid, and I turned around and said, "Shut up, you're stupid," right? So I go to school, spend a couple hours there, and then get the call that he had passed away at home. So the lesson I learned there was words are powerful, and whether or not they affect your life, they're definitely going to affect somebody else's. So I've had to live with that. The last thing I said to my brother was, "Shut up, you're stupid." And so I learned that lesson is you have to be careful with what you say, and you can't leave things unresolved. Fine to get into an argument, fine to have differences, but make sure that gets resolved before it goes too far. The other one was from my dad, and this was just a couple of years ago. He passed away from cancer. And we knew he had cancer, but things turned really quickly. And of course, like I said, Dad was a pastor when I was a kid as well. And once we all learned that the doctor had done as much as they could, and he was basically on some borrowed time, I was taking care of my dad, doing something in the hospital, and he looked me square in the eyes. He says, "It doesn't matter what happened, God's in control." And I said, "I know, you taught us well." So, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Christ or not, God's got a plan for everybody. And it's always better to be on that side of that plan. But those are the 2 biggest lessons I learned, that, I can trust that God's got a plan, and as long as I'm seeking after his will and doing things the way that would please him, I'm good. And as long as I'm taking care of my relationships with, brothers, sisters, friends, family, then I'm good there as well. So probably the 2 biggest lessons I've learned.
I love them. I love both of them. And again, I'm going to say I'm a very positive person, and I'm going to look on the bright side 9 out of 10 times in any given situation. For instance, if I got behind somebody slow on traffic, I think, well, God's just keeping me from an accident on up the road. It's good to have a good positive outlook. being a worship pastor,
Yeah.
you are kind of a rock star.
No, not
You're
at all.
you're singing, you're playing the guitar. I mean, you're no Guns N' Roses, of course,
This
for
is
sure.
true.
but still, you're in the spotlight. Is being the center of attention, or in that spotlight, hard on Chris Kuntz, the man, not the worship pastor, but the man? And either way, talk to me about that. Has that ever been an issue that has affected you?
I don't, if it's ever affected me, it's only affected me in ways that keep me humble.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, as somebody who stands on stage and is now being recorded every Sunday and it's being broadcast all over the world, you make mistakes. And I used to be, I'm a very detail-oriented person. I'm very much a perfectionist when it comes to what I do. But I've learned over the years that's not all it's cracked up to be. So being on stage has helped me with that, whether it's me trying to just explain something and I can't find the words, fumble all over myself. It is what it is. I'm in front of, it could be a couple hundred, it could be 1,000 people. To just be real. I think that's one of the things that's taught me is just be real. People respond to that, and people will know if you're on stage and you're fake.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to know that. It comes across loud and clear. Because what you are on stage, if it doesn't match what you are off stage, you're not going to lead anybody that way. And so I think you have to be the same in both places, on and off the stage. And that's something we tell our volunteers too. But yeah, I mean, it just keeps you humble.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've started the song in a wrong key, or I forgot the lyrics and had to make them up on the spot, or completely misquoted scripture on stage. It's just, just be real. And so I don't think there's a ton of pressure there. I'm actually more nervous in front of just a few people than I am on a big stage. So
honestly,
I'm petrified right now.
That's actually the best answer that I could have hoped for right there, because to keep it real, people admire a person that can make a mistake, that they're not so wound tightly that they can't be a real person, because you're going to get people that will relate to you better because, oh yeah, okay, I understand, he's a regular guy too.
Yeah.
Last question about churches. Some churches out there are dying. Do you believe, we just talked about this with technology moving forward, do you believe that virtual church will replace a physical church, or that technology will drastically change how that is going forward? And again, I know we talked about how that people are the church, and that you do need that sense of community, but the world is changing. Do you think that is really going to affect that going forward? I do, and I think this is the way I would answer that. Would you rather go to a football game in person, or would you rather watch it on TV? Would you rather go to a concert, or the virtual parking lot concerts that they've been doing lately? And I think most people would answer, well, I'd rather go to the real thing. Absolutely. And I think as a church, yes, there are going to be churches that don't make it through this. There are already churches who haven't made it through this. And there are definitely churches who have found new tools and new opportunities for outreach because of the online availability. And I think everybody knew that it was there. They were afraid to take the step. I was afraid to take that step. I had all the licensing in place. We had all the technology in place to do all of our music and everything online. And at the point before COVID, we were only doing messages. Luckily for us, we had already put everything in place, so it was an overnight switch for us. We had to run a few extra cables, and it was a fear. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to be the guy singing online as well. I was already doing that in person in the church. And so I think for some, yes, there are some that's already died. There are some that are not going to make it through because either they haven't recognized the dangers there of not getting people back into the church, or they don't know how to. I think there are churches who are going to grow significantly from this, and I think they're the ones that are analyzing all of those little things. How do we help people? How do we adjust to the new normal, because the old normal is gone? And so I think just working forward, we just have to be diligent in that. I don't know if I answered the question. I mean, that change is happening for sure, and we're not going to stop it. And that's interesting that so many people, myself included, drag their feet on change, and it's only when you are almost forced to make that decision that you can experience how great that it actually turned out. Again, just in your technology broadcasting to other people, how many other people did you reach that you would have never touched before you did that?
Well, that, and you know, we've had lots of stories come out of this, and one of them was a gentleman who attends our church, but who was deployed, and while overseas, halfway around the world, had it not been for our online services, would have been forced to just attend a general church service, which was fine, but since we were broadcasting online, he's now able to connect with his family at home. He was able to sing the songs that he knew, to see the faces he was familiar with. And I saw him after he got back, and almost through tears, had a hard time expressing how much that meant to him. Like I said, our missionaries and everything. So there's definitely a connection there, being able to broadcast and get normal, not normal, but familial faces out there. So.
Look right up there. Tell people how to go to Hope, where it is, when the services are.
How to go to Hope.
How to go to Hope.
Well, Hope is at 429 East Dustman Road, and services are currently at 8 o'clock, 9:30, and 11 on Sunday mornings. Of course, you can always find services online at hopeforthefamily.com. You can also go to the App Store, either Apple, which we've already discussed, or Google Play Store, and you can just look for Hope Missionary Church and download the app, and then all of the services and all of the pertinent information for the church is there.
Chris Kuntz, God's quarterback on Super Bowl Sunday.